She walked into the interview holding her son's tiny hand, his eyes full of innocence, hers full of hope. But instead of being welcomed, she was dismissed, ridiculed for being a mother who dared to dream. Just as she turned to leave in shame, the door opened, and in walked the millionaire CEO who would change everything. Maria stood outside the towering glass building, her heart pounding as she looked at her reflection in the doors. Her blouse was ironed crisp, her skirt simple yet neat, but her most important accessory was the small hand gripping hers tightly. 5-year-old Daniel looked up at her with sleepy eyes and asked softly, "Mommy, are we going to get the job today?" That one question pierced Maria's chest more than any rejection she had ever faced. She smiled, forcing hope into her eyes, and whispered, "Yes, baby. Mommy will do her best." Maria had been through countless hardships. Her husband had abandoned them when Daniel was barely 2, leaving behind nothing but debts and broken promises. She had been juggling waitressing shifts, cleaning jobs, and any work she could find just to pay rent. But this interview was her one shot at something real, an executive assistant position at Anderson Enterprises, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. If she got this, it meant stability. It meant a future where Daniel didn't have to sleep hungry. With trembling hands, she pushed the heavy glass door open. The lobby was immaculate, its marble floors shining under the morning light. The receptionist looked up, eyes immediately falling on Daniel. Her polite smile faltered, replaced with a frown of disapproval. "Excuse me, ma'am, children aren't allowed in the interview area," she said stiffly. Maria's cheeks flushed. I didn't have anyone to watch him today. He'll just sit quietly with me." The receptionist raised an eyebrow, her voice cold. "That's highly unprofessional. I'll notify the panel." Maria's heart sank, but she nodded and guided Daniel to a chair. He sat obediently, clutching his little toy car, unaware of the silent judgment surrounding them. Soon, Maria was ushered into the conference room. A panel of 3 managers sat across a long table, their expressions already stern. She introduced herself, voice trembling, and began answering questions with sincerity. But midway, Daniel coughed lightly from the hallway outside. One of the managers glanced toward the sound, lips curling in disapproval. "Is that your child?" he asked sharply. Maria swallowed hard. "Yes. I didn't have childcare today, but I promise, that's unacceptable," the woman on the panel interrupted coldly. "This is a corporate environment, not a daycare. How do you expect to handle responsibility here when you can't even arrange care for your child?" Maria's stomach twisted. She tried to explain her struggles, her resilience, her determination. But their eyes were already filled with dismissal. One man even chuckled under his breath, whispering something about desperation. Tears burned in her eyes, but she held them back. She couldn't break, not in front of Daniel. After a few more perfunctory questions, they leaned back, exchanging looks that said everything. "Thank you for coming," one finally said, his tone final. "We'll be in touch." Maria rose slowly, her legs heavy as she walked toward the door. Daniel stood up eagerly, his little face lighting up. "Did you get it, Mommy?" She forced a smile, blinking back tears. "We'll see, sweetheart." But as she turned toward the exit, her heart breaking with humiliation, the heavy wooden door behind her creaked open. A deep, commanding voice filled the room. "What's going on here?" Standing in the doorway was Jonathan Anderson, the CEO himself. Tall, impeccably dressed, his presence commanded silence. The managers immediately stiffened, their confident expressions melting into nervous ones. Maria froze, clutching Daniel's hand, unsure whether to flee or explain. Jonathan's sharp eyes scanned the room, lingering on Maria, then softening when they landed on Daniel. "Why is there a child outside the interview room?" he asked calmly, though his voice carried an undertone of authority. The female manager stammered, "Mr. Anderson, we were just finishing up." This candidate brought her child along, which, as you can see, is highly unprofessional. Jonathan's gaze flickered with something unreadable. He turned fully to Maria. Is that true? You brought your son with you today? Maria's throat tightened. Every instinct screamed at her to apologize, to make excuses, but something inside her snapped. She lifted her chin, meeting his eyes. Yes, sir. I had no choice. I'm a single mother, and I couldn't leave him alone. I know it doesn't look ideal, but I promise you. It doesn't mean I can't do this job. I'm hardworking. I'm committed. I just need someone to give me a chance. Jonathan studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The room was so silent Maria could hear Daniel's small breaths beside her. Then, to everyone's shock, Jonathan smiled faintly. What's your name? Maria Sanchez, she whispered. He nodded. Maria, would you mind stepping back in for a moment? With your son. The managers exchanged confused glances, but none dared object. Maria hesitated, then gently led Daniel into the room. Jonathan pulled out a chair for her himself, an act that left the managers wide-eyed. Tell me, Jonathan said, leaning forward. Why do you want this job? Maria took a shaky breath. Because I need to prove to my son that no matter how hard life gets, you don't give up. I want to give him a better life. I'm not afraid of long hours or challenges, I've faced worse. I just need someone to see me for what I can do, not for what I don't have. Jonathan's eyes softened again, and for the first time, Maria thought she saw respect in them. He glanced at Daniel, who was watching him curiously, clutching his toy car. And you, young man, Jonathan said gently, what do you want for your mom? Daniel's voice was quiet but clear. I just want her to be happy. The room went silent. Even the managers shifted uncomfortably, guilt flickering in their eyes. Jonathan leaned back, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the table. Then he said words Maria would never forget, you're hired. Maria could hardly believe what she had heard. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I'm hired, she asked in disbelief. Jonathan nodded firmly. Yes. Report to my office tomorrow morning at 9. The managers looked like they wanted to protest, but one sharp glance from Jonathan silenced them instantly. Maria's heart soared as she whispered a trembling, thank you. But with the joy came fear. Would she be able to handle this new role? Could she really balance motherhood and such a demanding job? The next morning, Maria walked into the towering building again, this time with her head held higher. She left Daniel with a kind neighbor who agreed to babysit, kissing his forehead before heading to the office. Jonathan's office was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He greeted her warmly, surprising her with his humility. Good morning, Maria. I wanted to welcome you personally. I saw something in you yesterday that many people overlook, the strength it takes to keep going when life tries to break you. Maria's chest tightened with gratitude. Over the following weeks, Maria threw herself into her work. She learned quickly, organized Jonathan's chaotic schedule, and anticipated his needs before he even voiced them. She stayed late when necessary, never complaining, determined to prove she was worthy of the chance he had given her. But not everyone was supportive. Whispers followed her in the hallways. Some employees accused her of being special to the boss, others sneered that she only got the job out of pity. The weight of their judgment pressed on Maria, but she refused to let it show. Jonathan noticed, of course. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, he called her into his office. Maria, are you okay? He asked gently. She forced a smile. I'm fine, sir. Just adjusting. Jonathan leaned forward, his gaze sincere. Don't let their words get to you. You earned this. I don't hire people out of pity. I hire people with potential, and you have more than most. Those words gave Maria strength. She began excelling, taking on projects that others struggled with, her confidence growing. Jonathan, too, began to notice more than just her work ethic. He saw the way she carried herself with quiet dignity, the way she lit up when she talked about Daniel, the way she refused to break under pressure. And somewhere in the unspoken spaces between their conversations, respect began to turn into something deeper. Months passed, and Maria's life transformed. She no longer worried about rent or meals, she could finally give Daniel the childhood he deserved. But more than that, she had found purpose again. Jonathan continued to mentor her, pushing her to take on leadership roles, to believe in herself. Slowly, Maria began to see herself not just as a struggling mother, but as a capable professional with dreams of her own. One evening, after a long board meeting, Jonathan invited Maria to his office. "There's something I want to tell you," he began. "When I saw you that day, walking out of the interview room with your son's hand in yours, I saw myself. My mother was a single mom too. She raised me while working 3 jobs. People judged her, just like they judged you. But she was the strongest person I've ever known. Hiring you wasn't charity, it was my way of honoring her." Maria's eyes welled up with tears. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. Jonathan smiled softly. "You already have. By proving me right." That night, Maria tucked Daniel into bed, tears slipping down her cheeks as she kissed his forehead. She realized her story had come full circle. She had walked into that building as a desperate woman clinging to hope. Now, she stood as a woman who had carved her place in the world, not just for herself, but for her son. The whispers in the hallways no longer mattered. What mattered was Daniel's smile, Jonathan's unwavering belief in her, and the knowledge that she had risen against all odds. Months later, Maria was promoted to head of operations, a role she never even dreamed she'd hold. Standing at the podium during her first speech, she looked out at the crowd, her eyes finding Jonathan's. He gave her a proud nod. Maria took a deep breath, her voice strong. "Never let anyone tell you your worth based on your circumstances. If you keep pushing, if you keep believing, one day the doors that shut in your face will be the same doors that open wide to welcome you." The room erupted in applause, and Maria's heart swelled. She knew this was only the beginning. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. And it had all started with the day she walked into an interview holding her son's hand. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll, share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to Kindness Vibes for more life-changing stories of love, struggle, and second chances. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that could inspire your next step. Like, comment, and share to spread kindness, because your one click can change someone's day.